What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Keep It Hoop YouTube channel. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Spreaker, welcome back. So I wanted to do what I did a couple weeks ago when just looking at new power rankings and giving my take on it, telling you guys how I feel, maybe some things I would change. I'm looking at ESPN's one this week, and at number one, they have the Clippers. I would have the Lakers. I think the Clippers are playing really well, and you can make an argument, and I don't think you can go wrong, really, with which one you have first. But I would personally just have the Clippers or the Lakers first, Clippers second. Up to you guys, though. But, yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the Clippers, they've been playing really well their last game against the Knicks. Beat them pretty handedly. I know Patrick Beverley, Kawhi, and Paul George missed some time. And, guys stepped up. Batum's been playing really well. Reggie Jackson's playing really well. I said this in yesterday's video as well, but Kawhi's doing Kawhi things, and Paul George just looks really, really, really focused. Kind of like his MVP season in Oklahoma, or MVP caliber season, excuse me. But yeah, I mean, they've been just staying quiet and letting their play do the talking, and I like that. But yeah, personally, I'd have the Clippers second and the Lakers first. The Lakers are at number 2 on ESPN, and I mean, there's not much to say about them. I mean, they've just been playing really well. LeBron's been continuing to surprise people despite his age. And Anthony Davis did struggle a bit with the shooting and scoring for a few games, but they sat him out for a game against the Pistons, and then he came back and dropped 27 and 14 against the Celtics. So, yeah, I'd have the Lakers first, but both LA teams honestly looking very, very good. The Sixers at number 3, they went on a 31-6 run. To beat the Pacers without Embiid, which was huge because one of the things was Ben Simmons had kind of struggled this year without Embiid. And I know Ben Simmons is a pass-first guy, likes to get others involved. But when he's aggressive and looking for his own shot, he, as well as the team, becomes that much harder to stop. And I love when he's aggressive. And it's not a skill thing because he has the ability to go out there and score 16, 20, 25 points. But it's a mentality thing which is unfortunately a little bit harder to change. You can always develop a jump shot or develop, different moves, an array of things you can do on offense. But the mentality is huge. And as we've seen with Ben and his jump shot, it's hard to change a player's mentality in terms of how they want to play, how aggressive they want to be. So seeing him aggressive was really nice. And look, I think at this point, it's no longer about what Philadelphia can do in the regular season. They've had good regular seasons in the past, although I do like this team's iteration a bit more just because they have a bit more shooting. And while they kept up the good defense, and I do think that, I know they're linked to J.J. Redick. If they can get that deal done, that would be huge for them. We know what J.J. has done for this team in the past, and that just more shooting, more veteran leadership. I love it. Hope they can get that done. But yeah, I think the questions are always going to be about what they can do in the playoffs because that's, ultimately when you have guys like Joel and Ben and then you have all these guys around them, bring in a guy like Doc Rivers, you're going for a finals. So yeah, we'll see how far they can get. ESPN has Utah at 4, and I understand why. I mean, they played really well. They won 11 straight games, and I mean, yeah, I get it, but I personally have Denver 4 just because Denver just beat Utah, and I do think as the season progresses and in the playoffs, Denver's better than Utah. And I know power rankings aren't for that. I know power rankings are how are they playing right now, but I like Denver better. So I have Denver at 4 and Utah at 5, but again, kind of like the LA situation, you can make the argument, and I'm actually, most people would probably have Utah over Denver. I personally just like Denver as a team, so I'm going to put them 4. But Utah, again, I said this in yesterday's video as well, but I just love the way they play in a league that has so many of the top teams having multiple superstars, big threes, dynamic duos. The Jazz have their guy in Donovan Mitchell, and he's not, no offense to him, the elite guys, right? Very good star. But even then, the Jazz have that, and then they just have a bunch of really solid guys who know their role and does it well, right? Jordan Clarkson turned into a very good scorer off the bench. Bogdanovich is going to chip in a decent amount of points. Mike Conley, who's going to play defense, and chip in a few points of his own. And then you have guys like Rudy Gobert. Everyone looks at him as a defensive anchor. And then you have Joe Ingles, another two-way player that plays really solid basketball. So, they play around Donovan Mitchell, obviously, but they have a bunch of guys who are very solid and above-average players, good players. And they play really good defense. Quinn Snyder really, really focuses on that end of the ball. And, yeah, they've been playing really well. It's another team that Utah hasn't had the ridiculously good playoff or regular seasons that Philadelphia or even Denver has. But they've had solid regular seasons in the past, and I think it's time that especially when people look at Donovan Mitchell, but the whole team in general, people are going to start to expect postseason success. And Utah just hasn't had that really. So that'll be interesting. They beat OKC in the first round when Donovan was a rookie, but ever since they haven't had any good postseason runs. So that's going to be the key for them. But I'd have Denver 4, Utah 5. But Denver is, they look good. They got off to a really rough start. They were on my list of one of those teams that just really looked bad, struggled, and their defense was bad. They're picking that end up. They're picking up that end of the floor recently a little bit, and Jokic is just continuing to add to his MVP case. Another great performance against Utah. Dominated Rudy Gobert for 47 points and 20 straight double-doubles to start the season. As long as MPJ did miss time when he was, I think he was with COVID. So now that he's back, I think they'll continue to do well. But in his absence, Will Barton filled in all right. JaMychal Green actually played really well. And Jamal Murray isn't even himself yet, a little banged up and hasn't been able to play the way he usually does. Once he gets fully healthy and he gets it going, I think this team will be as dangerous as they have been in the past. Brooklyn at number 6, which is weird because that loss to Washington was horrendous. And their defense has been not just bad, not just really bad, but historically bad. But that being said, the teams below them have had some shaky losses. So I can understand Brooklyn being 6. I would probably have. It's fair. I could see Brooklyn 6 because they won before they lost to the Wizards, and they are 13-9. Yes, their wins even look ugly. They don't play any defense, and that loss was bad. But you can argue they didn't have James Harden for that, and still is a winnable game. It's not like they lost by 10 to the Wizards. So you could argue Brooklyn at 6. I'm fine with that. Milwaukee 7. I don't know. I don't like this actually. I think I have Boston over them. Boston lost their game to LA, whereas Milwaukee lost back-to-back games to the Pelicans and the Hornets, 2 teams that I think the Bucks in the past would have won. I think the Bucks are still just trying to figure it out. They don't look like themselves really. Giannis's numbers have gone down, and a large part of that is due to Jrue Holiday coming in. But they're at 11-8, and according to ESPN, they didn't lose 8 games until November or until game number 54. So we're at 19 games. They're not on the same pace as they were the last couple of years, and I don't think they will be. And I get integrating a new point guard, a new big piece, and losing some depth is a big part of that. But still, I thought just Giannis and Chris Middleton would be able to power through the East a little bit more. They're at 11-8, and I don't really know. They might just be like a 3rd, 4th seed this season, a dangerous one at that. But yeah, they just don't look great. I don't think their defense is up to par. But who knows? Because their defense should be better, right? They have Brook Lopez, who's a good rim protector. They have Giannis and Chris Middleton, who are both good defenders, and they have Jrue, who's an All-NBA defender. So they should be better defensively. Giannis has struggled at times this year, although I think he's been fine. But yeah, I would have them 8 and then Boston at 7 actually. Boston did lose to LA, and they did lose Marcus Smart to a calf injury, I believe, which is pretty pretty unfortunate because he is a big part of that team. His impact on that team is way bigger than the numbers show. Just the heart and soul of that team. And they do start a West Coast swing, which is never easy. But yeah, I mean, I think they've been looking all right. Tatum and Brown have been fantastic, obviously, and Jaylen Brown making a very strong case to be an All-Star this year. And he's often been overshadowed by Tatum, but man, he looks really good this year. And Kemba being back, I think he looks solid. Yeah, I mean, I actually do think them losing Peyton Pritchard has hurt them a little bit. Never thought I'd say that, but he's been one of the surprise rookies this season. Look, Boston's a team that's gonna do fine. They're very well coached. They have veterans on their team. They have very, very good wing players. I think they'll be fine. Tice has been pretty good. Reggie Williams has been good in the limited minutes he's given them. I would have them over Milwaukee though, just because I think those two losses by Milwaukee were so inexplicable. Like it was so. I don't think Milwaukee shouldn't be losing to the Pelicans and the Hornets. So I have Boston at 7 and Milwaukee at 8. Indiana at 9. Phoenix at 10. I like Indiana at 9. I think Sabonis is just having. He had a breakout season last year, and he's continued that with an even more impressive season. I mean, he's just been so efficient and so good. I like what they're doing. Miles Turner's playing through a fracture in his right hand. And look, their defense is really big. A lot of it is because of Miles Turner and his rim protection, but they have guys like Malcolm Brogdon, who's a really good defender, and then you have Jeremy Lamb, who's coming off of an injury and then still playing pretty well, trying to fill in for a guy like TJ Warren. Very balanced team. I love the way they play, somewhat kind of like Utah. And look, they got off to a really good start, slowed down a bit, but still. A dark horse, top 10 team. I'm with it. I like the way they're playing. Number 10, Phoenix. Another team that got off to a very big start, very good start, and then slowed down a bit. But they had a bounce-back win over Golden State, finished it off with a win against the Mavericks, and they beat the Mavericks again last night off of a Devin Booker game winner. I think this is another team that has had good games, but they're still trying to figure out how to best play their game and how to be their best selves. And once they figure it out, I think they'll be fine. Chris Paul had a very, very good performance last night, 29 and 12. Yeah, I mean, I like this team. I had a lot of hopes for them coming into the season, and they're at 10 and 8. I thought their record would be a little bit better, but in all honesty, I had them finishing around the 7th, 8th seed. So I mean, I guess they're on pace for the most part, and yeah, but I mean, 10th I think is good for them. Portland at 11. This has been a disappointing team for me. They're at 10 and 8, which isn't bad, and I know they lost Nurkic and they've had injuries to Derek Jones and some other guys, and CJ McCollum obviously, but they had a huge win over the Bulls on Saturday with 2 threes in the last 9 seconds, kind of like the Nets game, and it was a wild game. But yeah, I mean, it's been a disappointing start for them. 11th, I guess, for how they're playing right now is fine, but I just would have liked to see more from this team, and because I had them, I think, finishing 4th or 5th. I thought the wing depth was something they've been missing for 4 or 5 years that they finally got, and it was able to, or should have been able to, just go well with what they had in CJ, Dame, and Nurk, but that's been a little disappointing. I will say Cantor's been playing really well, and he always does when he has to fill in. I don't think he's a full-time starter, but even when he had to start for the Blazers when Nurkic went down during the playoffs or right before the playoffs, he played really well. And he's developed a good pick and roll chemistry with Damian Lillard. He's always been a great rebounder. His defense has never been elite, but he's actually been trying. He's solid. He's not a liability anymore, I don't think. So 11, I think, is a bit too high in terms of what I had expected for them, but how they're playing right now is fair, I guess. I hope they can figure it out, though, because I'm a big Dame fan. I like CJ. I like Nurkic. I like Cantor. I mean, I do hope they can figure it out because I did have bigger expectations for them. Memphis, man, how surprising have they been? Now, it's been a weird season for them because they missed so much time with all the COVID-related stuff, the safety protocols. But that really helped because Ja Morant had that really bad sprain, and I think it was his 3rd game of the season. And they probably had, I mean, they must have had like 8 games or something postponed. Maybe a little less, but maybe like 5-6 games postponed because of the COVID stuff, and those are games that they're going to be able to make up later with Morant playing. Um, so I think that was big for them, and they actually played pretty fine without Morant. I think looking at that team, you take Ja out, and it was like they might just be devoid of talent, and they're going to drop a lot of games. But slow mo, Kyle Anderson stepped up, old reliable. Dylan Brooks played solid, and then you just had a bunch of guys stepping up and doing their part. Now you have Slow Mo continue to play well. Melton, who's been playing well. I like the way they're playing. I would have them at 13th, and the Spurs above them. And I know the Spurs just lost, but I think them getting Dirk White back to the rotation is big. And I personally just like San Antonio, and I do think that the San Antonio hasn't had any crazy performances, and they don't have any crazy players. But I think DeMar DeRozan, the way he's kind of changed up his game, has been really impressive. And this might be one of those situations where I just would pick San Antonio over Memphis head-to-head right now. But if, again, difference of one spot, Memphis 12, San Antonio 13, fair. Going down the list, Golden State at 14 is all right, I guess. They had a pretty bad loss earlier in the week. I think it was on Saturday to, who was it? To the Suns, and Wiseman is now out for a bit with sprained wrist. It's been an interesting thing with him just because he got pulled out of the starting lineup and then ended up playing really well after, but I'm sure there's reports of it, but I'm sure Wiseman's going to end up back in the starting lineup at some point. But Golden State has been faring pretty well, I guess, after a really, really rough start. Kelly Oubre just hasn't really lived up to anything, and he's been linked to a lot of trade rumors. Maybe he just will never figure it out in Golden State, so they're trying to just cut ties with him. I think he's been tied to trades with Lonzo Ball and JJ Redick to a lesser degree. And I like both of those trades, really, because I think JJ Redick there would work just because 3-point shooting, their offense would fit him. They get good looks this year. They just haven't been able to make shots. And I think JJ obviously helps with that. Lonzo, on the other hand, I think helps with just continuing to add to your defense. And then you let Steph continue to play more and more off the ball. Lonzo can make a lot of plays, and then you just try to get easier baskets off of the defense and running out with Lonzo. So I like the Lonzo trade as well. Atlanta at 15, another really disappointing team. Trey's picked it up over the last couple weeks, and he's been playing better, but he got off to a really slow start. Capella's been playing well, but also got off to a little bit of a slow start. And yeah, I get they've been injured a lot. Gallinari just came back, and Bogdanovich has been injured. Rondo's been in and out, but pretty disappointed with the way the Hawks have been playing. Defense is pretty bad, and I know that's not a thing that we expect them to be good at, but it is what it is. And yeah, they're just inconsistent. Cam Reddish, another guy who's inconsistent, who I had hopes for coming into not only last season but also this season. Kevin Huerter's numbers are a little bit down, I believe. So I don't know. Hopefully they can pick it up, but a young team that gets off to a slow start, a little bit difficult to turn it around. But yeah, we'll see. Houston at 16. I would actually have Houston way higher, if I'm being honest. Now that I see them, because I had San Antonio 12, Memphis 13. I would actually drop those teams down. Make San Antonio 13, Memphis 14, and I would probably have Houston all the way up at. I could actually have them in the 9-10 range because I love the way Houston has been playing. They're only at 9-9 overall in the season, but they're 6-3 since Harden left. John Wall, Christian Wood, and Oladipo have all missed games here and there, but they're still playing well. They have the NBA's second best defensive rating during that span after Harden left. And then also, just want a side note, the Nets have the worst defense in the league since Harden went there. It's not coincidence. There's other aspects of it. The Nets were already bad at defense. Houston has some good defensive pieces. But just pointing that out, right? But anyways, yeah, I love the way Houston's playing. You have three guys in Wall, Wood, and Oladipo who all of them won't make the All-Star game, but they're All-Star calibers. And look, they're just I just love the way they've played since Harden's left, and I'm happy for them. I think that situation that they got into, all three of those guys that got into, or not Oladipo, but both Wall and Wood, and I'm talking about DeMarcus Cousins, all three of those guys, the situation they got into when Harden started the year the way he did was unfortunate. It felt bad for them. Now they're kind of free of that. Oladipo comes in, and he's playing for a bigger contract. And look, I think they're playing really well. I would actually have them a lot higher, above the teams I listed, and have them probably in the top 10 actually. Cleveland at 17 has been a surprise this season. They have dropped off of their slow or hot start a little bit. They lost to the Knicks and Wolves, and those are the games that Cleveland, if they wanted to keep the standing of where they were after the hot start, those are the games that they're going to have to win. Now, the Knicks are a team that are kind of with them in the same area of level of play right now. Cleveland's at 9-11, the Knicks are at 9-12. And really, these, along with the Hornets, actually, the Hornets are 9-11, and ESPN has them Cavs, Hornets, Knicks. Those three teams, I think you can order however you want, and it doesn't matter because I think you can just make an argument for every one of those teams in every position. So it doesn't really matter. You know me, I will have the Knicks at 17. Probably the Hornets at 18 and the Cavs at 17. But, Colin Sexton's been all-star caliber. Been playing really well. And, their defense hasn't been what it was to start the season. But I still think it's been surprising how good their defense has been. They're a young team. They're going to go through ups and downs. But I'm still surprised. 9-11 is still, even after the rough stretch, 9-11 is still better than what I expected after 20 games from the Cavaliers. The Hornets at 9-11, another team that has surprised me on the back of a lot of it. Their defense, Gordon Hayward's having a very, very, very good season. Terry Rozier has been not the most consistent or the most efficient at times, but for the most part, it's been very good, averaging 21 over the 3 games. Sprained his ankle, though, so that is something to keep an eye on. But I love the way they use LaMelo. They're kind of, continuing to slowly ease them into things. They have him coming off the bench, but he had a huge game last week, and he just continues to improve. I think it's only a matter of time before he gets in the starting lineup. And once he does, I think it'll be even better for the Hornets. Devontae Graham, I've said this in the past, is in an unfortunate situation. I was a fan of him last year, just coming out of nowhere, really bursting onto the scene, but he's having a rough season. But really happy for Gordon Hayward as well. After everything, all the injuries, and he got paid, and now showing how good of a player he was before the injuries in Boston. New York at 19. Fair. Emmanuel quickly looked really good against the Clippers, but they lost to the Clippers, which isn't surprising. It's a very good team, a team that we had top 2. And at 9-12, if 9-12 is disappointing, only because the Knicks looked better at the beginning of the season. But if you told me before the season started that the Knicks would be 9-12, and that R.J. Barrett would be doing this, and that Julius Randle would be doing this, and then Emmanuel quickly would be doing everything he's done, I'd be happy. I'd be satisfied. So I don't think Knicks fans should worry. Ovi Toppin is going to continue to grow. I think it's going to take some time. Quickly is obviously adjusted to the NBA game better and faster, but I think Obi will be there in due time. I think 19 is fair. Dallas at 20, that's another team you could, have leap over any of the teams we just mentioned, but they've struggled in their own right. Their three-point shooting has been the league's worst, and they've been just struggling a lot, which is unfortunate because the way they like to play, obviously they want to space the floor out around Luka. Luka himself has been one of the guys that struggled from 3. Having Chris Hass back I thought would help more. But they've lost 5 straight games, and Luka himself said that they look like they play. It looks like they're playing like they don't care, which is fair. And Luka as the leader, is starting to call guys out, which is I like the leadership and the initiative he's taken, but he also has to play better. And they just look really bad, and I can't pinpoint what it is. Maybe I'll do a video on it, but 20 I think is fair. 21-22 Raptors and Heat. two of the most disappointing teams in the season. Miami finally got back Jimmy Butler. He had 30 in the win over the Kings, so maybe that'll help. It should help. But, I mean, they have a lot of injuries. Other than that, I mean, Dragic has been out. Avery Bradley's out. Myers Leonard's been out. Tyler Hero has missed games through safety protocols. But, yeah, I mean, even when they were somewhat healthy, they just didn't figure out what the starting lineup or offense is going to be. They had Hero coming in the starting lineup, Dragic moving in and out. They played with the Kelly Olynyk lineups. And, I don't know, they just don't look great. And hopefully, I'm hoping that last year wasn't a fluke because I do like a lot of guys on that team. I like the way they play. But Toronto as well, man. They just OG Anunoby's out now. But that game's just all up to, or that team is all up to Pascal. Fred VanVleet, I think, has held his end of the bargain, and Pascal struggled a lot. Another guy I'm a big fan of that just hasn't really gotten it together ever since the NBA went on pause because he looked really bad in the bubble as well. And he said coming into this season that he had kind of lost his way and wasn't having fun playing basketball in the bubble, but that he was ready to get back to himself, and he just hasn't been able to pick up where he left off. Because after the whole Kawhi leaving and with them winning the finals and then Kawhi leaving, he started off that next season, so last season, really well. And it looked like he was being that, he was ready to be that guy for a franchise. And it just has, ever since, again, the pause, he just hasn't been himself. So, you know, is this a fluke, or was the beginning of last year or last season a fluke? That's the big thing. Hopefully, it's the former and he can get back to himself. But disappointing season for both of those teams. I'm just kind of round out the end of the list. Pelicans at 23. There's what it is, 7-11. I think they're still a little bit disappointing. Bledsoe hasn't been Bledsoe since he left Phoenix, really, to be honest. Milwaukee, after Giannis really developed, and then they started to bring in guys like George Hill, he was never Eric Bledsoe. I still don't really like Steven Adams being next to Zion. I think it hinders them. And yeah, I mean, I think they've been a little disappointing. 7-11. I thought they would have been around 500. OKC, I expect it to be bottom 5 really all season with the talent or the lack thereof that they have. They kept it close with the Nets at certain points, but they did give up 147 against them. Sacramento at 25, 8-11. They've been pretty bad. Chicago at 26. I would have higher because I think their wins have actually, or they have a lot of close losses, and I know losses are still losses, but I think if you just look at on-court production, they've been playing better than the Kings and the Thunder, and arguably the Pelicans. And I know they had the really bad loss to the Portland Trail Blazers that we just talked about, but I would actually have them higher than 26, and I think they're better than their 7-11 record shows. They just had a solid win against the Knicks last night as well. The Wizards at 27, they had their biggest win of the season against the Nets, but that was still a game they should have lost. They still play absolutely no defense. They would be last in defense in the league if it wasn't for the Nets, and they put up really good numbers. Russell Westbrook had his best game as a Wizard. Bradley Beal added his amount of points. They both played really well, and then they still almost lost to the Nets. They should have lost to the Nets. If TLC knew how to make a lefty layup, they would have lost. Orlando at 28 is understandable, but it's just unfortunate for them. Yeah, they could be playing better, but they've just been hit by so many injuries. We know Markelle Fultz injured his ACL a few weeks ago. Jonathan Isaac is out since he got hurt in the bubble. Now you have Aaron Gordon, who's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks with a really bad sprained ankle. So that team was already going to have a tough time being a playoff team with teams like Atlanta getting better. And now you have teams like the Knicks and even the Cavs and the Hornets in the hunt. And Orlando is just finding it harder and harder to continue to compete with those teams. And it's the pressure on Vucevic and now even a guy like Evan Fournier is going to be huge because they're just lacking so much talent. They play hard. They try hard. 8-13, I think, for the amount of injuries they've had is still solid, but it's only going to get harder because Aaron Gordon was a guy they did rely on for scoring, defending, and they had kind of made him a de facto second point guard. So it's going to be tough for them, and I do see them continuing to slip. Minnesota at 29. I've been pretty disappointing. Anthony Edwards has been pretty inefficient, which isn't, a crazy thing for rookies to go through. He has started to turn around a bit, but D'Angelo Russell continues to be inconsistent. Cat was in and out of the lineup, so it is what it is. But 5-14 for the amount of talent they have on that team, at least in the scoring department, even with a guy like Malik Beasley. I mean, it's kind of disappointing, but goes to show you. I mean, again, I think it's been the same thing for that team really for a number of years. It's the defense, it's the leadership, maybe it's the culture. I mean, that team just hasn't been able to get it done. And Carl Anthony is one of those guys where you have to start looking at, like, does he have the most help on his team? No, but at the same time, like, you can't just put up empty numbers. If you're a top 10, top 15 player like I'm sure he believes, you at a certain point you got to just start winning, right? You got to find ways, and defense and playmaking are two things that he can definitely get better at. Maybe they turn around, but Minnesota's looking really bad, and they're only 29 because the Detroit Pistons are in the league, and granted they've had some injuries, but man, they're in the news more so for arguing with the Warriors than they are for their actual play, which might be a good thing, because if you look at their play, they've been really bad, horrendous, just really bad. Jeremy Grant's pretty much the only good thing they got going for them. Yeah, I mean, I really don't know what to say. Blake Griffin, unfortunately, isn't himself, and I know there are some jokes about that, but it's more so just because he sacrificed really his knee. I think it was now 2 seasons ago in that playoff first rounder. And Blake really just paid the price, sacrificed for his team, really left it all on the line, and he just hasn't been the same since. Unfortunate for him. Yeah, I mean, it's just been a disappointing season for them. They haven't even been able to develop Killian Hayes because he got injured. And to be honest, he didn't even look good before he got hurt, which is surprising, because I really was high on him. I wanted the Knicks to take him. Almost glad we didn't, because I'm sure we wouldn't have taken quickly if we took Killian Hayes. So I guess the Knicks knew what they were doing. But yeah, Detroit, Minnesota, been pretty bad, struggling. I feel for Orlando just because they've had the injuries, and that's a bigger part of, I think, why they've struggled compared to Minnesota and Detroit, who have just been. I mean, Minnesota's had their own injuries, and they had Cap, but I mean, Detroit's just been bad, super bad. And I don't think anyone was surprised. I think this is kind of expected. But yeah, that's it for today. I know a longer video, and podcast-wise, it's normal length, I guess. Maybe even shorter compared to what we used to do. But thanks for watching/listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We will be back Thursday. We might do an article or a blog post tomorrow, but we'll definitely be back Thursday. We are actually looking to talk about... I saw an interesting list talking about the most disappointing players on each team, so I wanted to kind of do my own take on that. Maybe we'll even do the most surprising player on each team. But yeah, stay tuned for that. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment on YouTube. It would mean a lot. The algorithm has been, still trying to figure that out, as we are somewhat new to this, and it would help with that. And do like us and follow us on our social media pages as well. It is keep_it_hoop on Instagram, and it is at keepithoopblog on Twitter. Links will also be in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and stay tuned. We'll have more stuff on Thursday, and we will see you guys then.